Good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for finding time to be with us this afternoon. It is 3 p.m. East African time. The show is Diaspora Dispatches. We get to bring you the latest news from across the continent. My name is Miriam Ogoto, and today we shall start our bulletin from Ethiopia. And dozens of young Ethiopian men continue to gather at the Russian embassy in the capital, Addis Ababa, on Tuesday following rumors of soldiers being recruited to fight in the war in Ukraine. But the embassy spokesperson, Maria Janukina, said no recruitment was being carried out in Ethiopia. She said the crowd was showing solidarity with Russia. Many of the Ethiopians at the embassy were seen carrying their personal documents. Others said they had heard rumors of high wages in Russia. Ethiopia was among countries that missed a UN session to vote on a resolution on the Russian invasion in Ukraine. Some 17 African countries, including South Africa, abstained from that vote. And then we head over to the Central African Republic, where the country's Special Criminal Court is due to hear its first trial today, 7 years after it was found. The higher-grade court, staffed by both international and Central African judges and prosecutors, was set up to investigate war crimes and crimes against humanity committed in the past 2 decades. The court in Bangui has been praised by some as a model of justice in a country blighted by decades of civil war. Others have cast doubt on its effectiveness. The defendants on Tuesday trial are members of the 3R, one of the most powerful armed groups in the country. They are accused of massacring dozens of people in the northwest of the country. The president of the ICC, Peter Hofmannsky, has tweeted his solidarity and support for the Special Criminal Court. And then we head over to Libya, and Libya's National Oil Corporation says that a wave of protests affecting the energy sector are likely to get worse. At least 4 separate groups have stopped production of oil fields and energy facilities across the country. The protesters want Libya's Tripoli-based Prime Minister Abdul Hamid Deiba to hand power to rival government led by Fathi Bashagha, which was formed last month. The 2 governments have been competing for power since Libya's parliament elected Mr. Bashagha prime minister. But Mr. Deiba says he still has a mandate to govern until national elections scheduled for June. And then we head over to Mali, and the country has received another batch of military equipment from Russia after the European Union suspended its military training program in the Sahel nation. Mali's Armed Forces Chief Major General Umar Diarra received 2 combat helicopters and surveillance radars. The Malian presidency said in a statement. The presidency shared a video showing the equipment as it was being delivered by a Russian cargo flight at the airport in the capital, Bamako. Mr. Diarra termed Russia's support to Mali's manifestation of the very fruitful partnership last month. Mali received 2 Russian-made combat helicopters and radars shortly after reports that its defense minister and Air Force chief discreetly visited Moscow. State media widely publicized the reception and hailed Russia's growing support for Mali in counter-insurgency operations. Mali has defended relations with Russia after international backlash over a decision to deploy mercenaries from the controversial Wagner paramilitary firm in December. This triggered the ongoing withdrawal of France's operation in Barkhane forces and European troops under the Tabuka task force. And then we head over to the DRC, where 2 soldiers have shot dead 15 people in separate attacks in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. The victims were all civilians. This comes after 6 people were wounded when soldiers threw a grenade into a crowd while trying to carry out an arrest. An official in South Kivu province said a drunk soldiers on a boat in Lake Tanganyika killed 8 passengers, including children, before he was arrested. On Sunday, another soldier shot dead a colonel, his bodyguard, and 5 civilians in Ituri province. The killer, also said to have been drunk, was shot dead by a colleague as he fled. For more than 2 decades, people from eastern DRC have endured frequent attacks by dozens of armed groups. And of course, President Felix Tshisekedi has said ending the violence is a top priority of his government. And then we head over and the latest from the Flooding in South Africa. President Cyril Ramaphosa has declared a state of national disaster in South Africa. This comes a week after terrible floods left at least 443 people dead in the Durban area of the East Coast. Some 10,000 troops have been deployed to the affected areas to assist the overwhelmed relief efforts. The week-long downpour has led to deadly floods and landslides in KwaZulu-Natal, where most of the casualties have so far been recorded. According to the National Meteorological Institute, the rainfall has eased since the weekend and no further flooding is expected in the coming days. Thousands of people have been displaced. Some areas have been left without water and electricity since Monday. Water tankers are trying to bring in drinking water, but roads and bridges are still cut off. And then we go to Somalia, and the terrorist group Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for a mortar fire attack on Somalia's parliament on Monday that injured at least 6 people during a joint session. Explosions were heard in the middle of a parliamentary session. Several people were injured, but no elected official were hit by the shrapnel that landed in the fortified airport compound near Parliament in the capital Mogadishu, officials and eyewitnesses have reported. Parliamentarians were due to set dates for votes to appoint the presidents of the 2 legislative chambers, the next step in a long-delayed process to elect a new president to lead the country. The upper house will vote on the 26th of April and the lower house the following day to appoint their respective leaders, officials have confirmed. Only 290 out of the 325 seats were filled, but lawmakers pledged to move ahead with the electoral process that has been marred by a power struggle between the sitting president and the prime minister. The Al-Qaeda-affiliated Al-Shabaab, who have been waging an insurgency against the Somalia state for more than a decade now, claimed responsibility for the attack in a brief statement. And then the latest from South Sudan, and United Nations Interim Security Forces for Abyei UNISFA have arrested 12 Massyrian gunmen suspected to be behind the recent deadly attack that have killed 41 people in the area. United Nations Interim Security Force for Abyei UNISFA in a press statement mentioned they have also seized 7 AK-47 rifles. The statement added that a hand grenade seized from the attackers exploded when the UNISFA troops were separating ammunition from weapons, but there were no injuries. Last week, authorities in the Abyei administrative area reported the killing of 41, including women and children, in 3 separate attacks. 5 civilians were killed in Low village cattle camp east of Abyei, and 2 hours later 9 people were killed in Nong village north of Abyei. The suspected Massyria group also killed 27 people in Amet. And that is the latest news from across the continent. Very interesting developments there. I see Russia is living up to its promise to Mali, and it's just delivered another batch of military equipment. Remember, Mali is a very important country as far as the fight against extremism in the Sahel region. And the European Union, led by France, have been great partners in trying to help. And Mali as a country has been very strategic. As I've said, it's a very important component as far as the fight against extremism is concerned. But after the ousting of President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, France particularly was not very happy with that. And of course, the West have been calling for Mali to organize quickly, an election so that the country can come back to a civilian rule country. The initial agreement after the ousting of Boubacar Keïta was 2 years transition period, and not 2 years really, but as quickly as the elections were supposed to be held in February of this year, 2 months ago. So as the months progressed and February was nearing, the Malian military leaders showed no sign of wanting to organize for an election so that Mali could return to a civilian-ruled country. And ECOWAS, of course, suspended Mali from ECOWAS, from that bloc, the economic bloc of West Africa, and also the African Union. because the rules of the African Union. And so, Mali, by having the military leaders, had violated one of those very important components for you to be a part of the African Union. So the country was also suspended from the African Union. And so, France, I think, threatened, if the country cannot go back to a civilian rule, so we will start getting our troops out of the country. And at that point, France had about 5,000 troops in Mali. So they started getting their troops out slowly. But maybe that was a way to try to coerce Mali to, one, have those elections, which Mali was not very keen in doing. And France and these other Western countries are very paramount as far as beefing up and helping Mali beef up its security and other countries within the Sahel region. So anyway, Mali seems to, the military seems to have stood their ground. So France lived to its threat and started withdrawing its troops from there. And of course, other the European Union nations, and of course, even a country like Germany protested, especially when details started to emerge that this Wagner mercenary group from Mali had announced that it wanted to come in and help Mali to stabilize and to take care of its security issues, which have been a problem. I think that is one of the key problems that even so protest in the streets, and that even so President Boubacar Keïta being removed from office, the issue of insecurity that we've seen very rampant in some of these West African countries. We see how that is playing out in Nigeria itself. We see how that is playing out in Burkina Faso, in Cameroon. Countries along that corridor are really going through tough times as far as extremism, activities is concerned, with Boko Haram and other Al-Qaeda or IS, Islamic State militants, affiliate, groups over there. So anyway, France started taking out its troops, and I think at that point Mali was already in talks with this mercenary group from Russia. And so they were happy and said, we will come and help you. So that infuriated France, as was expected, because we know already, the proxy war, the misunderstanding, the acrimony that is already playing out there in Europe. So that was sort of essentially transferred here in Mali. So they upped and they started moving out of the country. And Russian mercenary group was just happy to come in and fill that void. And so we see they've gone on to bring in now combat helicopters. That happened last week, and they brought in another batch of military equipment, and and that is after the European Union suspended its military training program with the Sahel nation. Of course, it continues with other nations around there. So I don't know if the insurgency operations in Mali have been brought under control since the presence of this Russian Wagner group has been in the country. That is yet to be seen. But they're living up to their to their promise. But what I wonder is, what is the end game? What exactly do they, because there's no way in the middle of what Russia is going through. Are they going through, or they're doing right now to Ukraine? There's no way they will find time to send, I know this is sort of a private, company, paramilitary company, but it is associated with the Russian government, the Wagner mercenary groups. I don't know if they would afford to have them come and actively be in Mali if at all there was nothing Russia was going to gain out of it. I think the back end of this story, I'd like to know, what is the end game? What does Russia, what does the Wagner group, outside of Russia trying to establish, its footing in the continent? We've seen how Russia has really been trying. Of course, the pace has been a little bit slow, and how European Union and other Western countries have been countering its presence in the continent here in Africa. But right now, with everybody just looking at what is happening in Ukraine and everybody worried about, the war there and other things, Russia being in the middle of all this crisis, really, is finding other ways of still coming into the country, because as we speak right now, it has offered to go to the Central African Republic. It has also offered to go to, the military in Sudan is also in talks with, Russia right now. And even the leader was in Russia just before Russia invaded Ukraine. So, it's a lot going on. So, all right, it's a lot going on over there. Abdisamad Ali, nice to see you. It's been a while. Thank you so much for joining. So we'll wait to see how that will play out, and if at all this Wagner group will bring order in Mali. And I want to know what Moscow stands to benefit. There's no way they'll be doing this for the sake of bringing peace in Mali, for the sake of bringing order in Mali. That is not how it works. How does this serve Putin's, foreign policy? How does this fit into whatever it is they intend to, achieve in Africa as far as extending and having influence in the continent? As I've said there earlier, Russia has been, trying really to find a footing here. As we know, Africa is the new frontier. Everybody has turned back here into the continent, and the European Union has been trying to counter Russia's influence in the continent, China's influence in the continent, and we've seen they've been doing that very aggressively, but now they're caught up in that war in Ukraine, and Russia still finds time to try to do things here in the continent. Quite interesting. Good luck, Esin Walker. Thank you so much. You're saying good afternoon. Thank you. And all right, thank you to know that you're watching. So I'm just waiting here to see that these activities, militant activities, and the insurgency perhaps will slow down. Then maybe will not complain. And then after that, what does Russia stand to benefit from its presence in these countries that it is slowly but surely establishing its presence here? And even as you speak, remember the first news item I started with, in case you're joining, dozens of young Ethiopian men continue to gather at the Russian embassy in the capital Addis Ababa on Tuesday, following rumors of soldiers being recruited fighting the war in Ukraine. But the embassy spokesperson Maria Chenurukina said no recruitment was being carried out in Ethiopia. She said the crowd was showing solidarity with Russia, but even as she refuted those claims for the eyewitnesses and for the BBC, which covered this story, there are evidence of these young men who are going to the Russian embassy in Ethiopia having carried their personal documents that look like, passports and things like that. So I don't know if Russia is not, because we know there has been some claims that Russia has been getting fighters from Syria, Russia has been getting fighters from Syria and other countries that has helped Russia in other ways, or where Russia had come in ways. You remember when, the U.S. leading they wanted the regime change they wanted to remove Assad, and Russia came in, to save Assad. And we know how that went. And Assad is still there. Half of Syria is in shambles, but anyway, I'm telling you, this proxy war, sometimes there's something else. And now we see there's a possibility, if this story is true, that Russia could be recruiting some young Ethiopians to go help in fighting. So this spokesperson said, no, these young people who are coming here are just coming here to show solidarity with Russia. But in what way? They're not protesting, they're not carrying placards outside of the embassy saying we support the invasion or we support whatever it is that is they want to support. They're seen lining up in the embassy, a Russian embassy in Ethiopia, carrying their documents, passports, IDs, other forms of official documents. And it appears as though they're being recruited to go join that war. And I think the question of Africa actively being involved in this war between, this invasion in Ukraine has been brought to question because, we've seen European countries trying to coerce us as a continent to join and take sides. And I think we've had this conversation here. And Africa is not one country. Africa is 55 countries. And all these 55 countries, each country have their right to do whatever it is they want to do. If they want to join, they want to support Russia, if they want to support Ukraine, we should not be pushed to take a certain particular stand as a continent, because we all have different interests. Our foreign policies differ, widely. So you can't push us to support or to, we all have our reasons. Kenya, we saw, has been very strong and has been very clear on the stand that it has taken, and it, for whatever reason, and it has its reason, and other countries have decided we're going to abstain from that. And I think it is within their rights as nations in this continent. And the fact that now there's a possibility that, some young Ethiopians could find themselves in the firing lines there in Ukraine, I think that is worrying. So I don't know, but, the spokesperson has said, no, these are just people who are here to show solidarity. And remember, Ethiopia was among the countries that missed a UN session to vote on a resolution on the Russian invasion in Ukraine. Of course, some 17 other African countries, including South Africa, abstained from that vote. So maybe that tells you, maybe, without saying too many words, the fact that they didn't, that already tells you maybe where Ethiopia's stand is. But also, as we know, Ethiopia has its own problems right now. It has an active, ongoing conflict that has been forgotten because of the war in Ukraine. Remember, between the Ethiopian government and the TPLF, that is an active conflict that is still there in Ethiopia. So it has a lot to deal with. So when it did not vote, I thought maybe Ethiopia just have enough to deal with right now. And that's why maybe the Ukraine vote was not something of its, of importance to it. But as it turns out, who knows? There's a probability, and so we'll just see how this story will pan out and see how this works out. Anyway, the unfortunate flooding in South Africa, particularly in the Durban area of the East Coast, has now claimed about 443 lives and counting, and right now there are 10,000 troops that have been deployed to the affected areas to assist in the overwhelmed relief effort. And the week-long downpour has led to deadly floods and landslides in KwaZulu-Natal. That's where Durban is. So a lot of casualties, many people have been displaced. And you look at some videos coming from that flooding is really worrying. Houses have been swept, properties have been destroyed, cars have been swept away, and of course, people have been hurt, and a lot of them are receiving treatment. And so it's been a horrible experience there, and the flooding continues. But according to the Meteorological Institute in South Africa, the rainfall has eased since the weekend, and no further flooding is expected in the coming days. And as I said, thousands of people still remain very much in trouble and displaced. And before we go, let's just look at this story from Somalia, where the terrorist group Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for a mortar attack on Somalia's parliament on Monday. Remember, Somalia has been having this happened in the middle of a parliamentary session, and of course several people were injured, but not elected officials. Somalia has been going through its elections, and which has been postponed from time to time. So the upper house will vote on the 26th of April, and the lower house the following day to appoint their respective leaders. And only 290 out of the 329 seats were filled. But lawmakers pledged to move ahead with the electoral process that has been marred by power struggle. And, it's interesting that during this electioneering period, that is when the attacks by Al-Shabaab have intensified. And the last time we were looking at this story, the National Intelligence Service for Somalia had come out and said there are planned attacks that are looming, and Prime Minister and President Farmajo were the targets. And Al-Shabaab came out and said, no, we are not planning that. Don't drag us. As much as, yes, these two and other government officials are our key targets, but we're not. We're not planning to attack. We've not issued that. And if told we did, the National Intelligence Service does not even have the capacity to know what we're planning to do in Somalia. So they say, don't drag us into your politics. And so now Al-Shabaab has attacked Parliament. It did that yesterday. I don't know why I look at these attacks with a bit of a side eye. I don't know if really this is Al-Shabaab that is doing this or what is really going on there, because when it comes to Somalia, it's very hard to understand how, things are done there. And we know for a fact from what we've been seeing, these elections that are being delayed, it could be choreographed. There are people there who are not keen on having elections in Somalia. And so if we can delay these elections by any means necessary, then we are going to do that. And that is how we've been seeing this playing out. So even after the National Intelligence Service came out to say their plans being attacked and the target is the president and the prime minister, and Al-Shabaab itself came out and said, no, they're not planning that. We're not planning that. Makes you wonder what is really going on. Do we believe what Al-Shabaab is not what a terrorist group is saying, or do we believe what the National Intelligence Service, which is very questionable, is saying? So where does this leave, the truth? Who is saying what? And why are these attacks intensified during this period of elections? Who does not want elections in Somalia? Who is benefiting from this chaos? But anyway, the elections, some of it happened. And 290 out of the 329 seats, as I said there, were filled. But of course, the attack yesterday, the Al-Qaeda-affiliated Shabaab, who have been waging an insurgency against the Somali state for more than a decade, they did claim responsibilities for the attack in a brief statement. So that is also there. Okay. I'm telling you, the issues in this continent, it's just amazing. Sometimes you wonder. And the killings and the communal fightings continue in South Sudan. There has been some progress being made as far as the implementation of the 2018 peace agreement is concerned. We've seen the unification of the forces partly happening. We've also seen the peace committee or something coming together, and the security committee, they've been working to at least try. I don't know if because there's been progress that have been made, I think for the past like a month or so. I think. I don't know if it's because the Pope is visiting South Sudan very, very soon. And when the Pope comes, they might want to have something to say as far as progress is concerned after that kiss they had during the spiritual retreat in Vatican. That was about 3 years ago, I believe. That was in 2019. I don't know if that is the case, or they actually genuinely are doing this because the country needs to move forward and the people of South Sudan need to find a solution very soon. Whichever the reason is, I'm just glad that there is progress that is being made, and this progress will be sustainable for prosperity, and this progress will lead to a better South Sudan. And so it's good. But even as we speak, a lot of insecurity, a lot of communal killings and conflict, a lot of things that has to do with security, and the lack of it is going on in South Sudan. So that is something that needs to be addressed. And of course, the United Nations Interim Security Forces for RBA, UNISFA, have arrested 12 Syrian gunmen suspected to be behind the recent deadly attack that has killed 41 people in the area. And these forces, the United Nations forces in South Sudan, they've been accused of just holding guns like they're holding a loaf of bread and just doing nothing about it. People are being killed in areas where these guys are stationed just close by, and civilians are being murdered, are being raped, and things are just continue happening. And you wonder, why do we have these missions over there then if they cannot even protect the civilians, at all? But they came in and they're saying they arrested these people. And so I guess that is a good thing. So we need to see a lot of people who commit these heinous acts being brought to book and being held accountable, because accountability structures is what is lacking in South Sudan. And so everybody gets to do whatever they want with a lot of impunity. And that is quite unfortunate. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Diaspora Dispatches. My name is Miriam Ogutu. Enjoy the rest of your day. Good afternoon.